Hey guys, how's it going? Danconia, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Week 24 preview. So we are back with the Overwatch League once more, and we are heading into the end of the season now. We are now going to do 3 weeks of fixtures leading into the Countdown Cup, which will be the last tournament ahead of the playoffs, which will take place a little bit later this year, and then there'll be 2 weeks of regular fixtures after that. And then the season, the regular season will have finished. So we are really getting into crunch time for some teams now, and some teams really need to start putting wins on the board. Some teams need to make sure that they continue their momentum going in to the end of the season. So we are going to see 12 fixtures this week. We are actually going to see them spread across 3 days instead of 2 days. This is why this is coming out on a Thursday instead of a Friday, is because, well, there's 2 fixtures that take place on the Friday for the NA region. So this is going to be super duper interesting. And there are actually some really interesting matches coming at us this weekend. And some matches that are really going to have an impact on the standings. And if I was to say, they're matches that some teams really need to win if they want to start making a push, if they want to be around those playoff or play-in spaces at the end of the season. Of course, we don't know exactly what format those playoffs are going to take. I mean, the Overwatch League did say that they wanted to make it fair across both regions for people to get into the playoffs. So I don't exactly know how they're gonna do that. So yeah, I mean, I'm just making a judgment on the current playoff places and how it usually works. But we are going to start off on July the 17th, which is the Friday at 8 PM British Summer Time, with the Vancouver Titans taking on the Paris Eternal. So, Vancouver Titans had a decent display during the Summer Showdown. Paris Eternal were the winners of the Summer Showdown in North America, and they looked darn good against the San Francisco Shock and against the Philadelphia Fusion. Paris Eternal played some of the best Overwatch that we've ever seen during those matches, and I wouldn't expect this to change. I mean, we're seeing a slightly different meta develop, obviously, with the hero bans that we've got in place now. No Orisa, no Ana, no May, and no Widowmaker. That means that double barrier, as it was in the Summer Showdown, is not possible at all. Also, May rush comps aren't possible. So it's going to be very interesting to see how teams adapt, but Paris Eternal have a lot of quality, and it is still very viable to play the Genji, and I would expect Paris Eternal to try and probably force the Genji. Whether that is a good thing to do or not, I don't know. We may see people resort back to perhaps more Tracer Ashe, considering Widowmaker is banned as well, and if so, other teams may benefit from that in the North American region, not so much Paris. But it'll be interesting to see, and I still think this Paris Eternal side will have too much for this Vancouver Titans side. But this Vancouver Titans side needs to start picking up wins. Yes, they have a lot of games in hand over the teams around them, having only played 12 matches this season. That's the lowest amount, or joint lowest amount of any team. Some teams are up on 18 now. I'm looking at you, Chengdu Hunters and Guangzhou Charge. But they need to start picking up wins if they want to try and make a late push for those play-in spots. So this is the sort of match where they need to make a good display, because they've got another match this weekend that is actually winnable if we look at it for the Vancouver Titans. So I would hope they make sure that they prepare for that second match they have. But at 10 PM, we see an incredibly interesting match. This is the Texas Showdown. This is the Houston Outlaws taking on the Dallas Fuel. So 2 teams that are outside of the old style playing spots. Houston in 14th, Dallas in 16th. Both teams promising, and one team showing more improvement than the other right now, I would say, and that is the Houston Outlaws. I think they've shown some decent improvement recently, and Dante has really been stepping up. We've seen a lot of Linkser as well. It's all been looking fairly good for the Outlaws recently, even with hydration on the main tank. Dallas Fuel? An over-reliance on Decay still lingers around that Dallas Fuel side, and it's worrying. I'm not going to lie. There is no Widowmaker, so Decay is not going to have that insta pop-off potential. Not saying that he can't pop off on something else, but that is something to keep in mind for the Dallas Fuel this weekend. This is a difficult one to call, because This is not just a straight look at the standings. Oh, they're there. They're clearly the best, but the better team. They're going to win. That's not what this is. This is a match that will be played with passion, not just the numbers, if you see what I mean. And so it could go either way. Dallas Fuel have got a lot more matches to play for the rest of the season than Houston Outlaws have. So it is much more crucial that the Houston Outlaws get a win. But the Dallas Fuel also need that win. So I still think the Outlaws will have too much for the Fuel. But I think this is going to be an incredibly close match. And I think it will depend on which set of DPS pop off more. And that will be a very interesting matchup to see. Because I think Meko is better than Note. I think Hydration will hang around Gamsu. That's not a problem for him. And I think the support lines will be fairly okay with each other. So I think it's the DPS that are going to make the difference in this match. And yeah, it could go either way with the way these two teams have been popping off recently. But then we move to the Saturday and we move to our only APAC region games of the weekend. Because we're only going to see some on the Saturday. Goodness knows why. Because they're just cramming them in the last 2 weeks of the season. But let's not go back to that debate again. But at 9 AM on the Saturday, we will see the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Seoul Dynasty. So, Seoul Dynasty, they kind of turned up at the Summer Showdown. They gave the Spitfire a good slapping. And then they lost quite heavily to the Shanghai Dragons. Hangzhou Spark, yeah, wasn't the greatest of looks, was it? There's a lot of work still to do for this Hangzhou Spark side, and they need to find some traction. They are in 11th place, so they are occupying the last play-in spot right now, but it's a very precarious spot. They've got teams behind them that have played a lot less games that could easily take that spot from them. I'm talking about Gladiators, I'm talking about London, I'm talking about perhaps even the Fuel with the amount of games they've played, Houston, Toronto. There's a lot of possibilities there. And this is depending on whether the playoffs are done via the old method. Who knows how they're going to do it, they haven't said anything. But Hangzhou Spark, they've played a lot of games this season. They're on 17 matches, and so they need everyone they can get. Seoul Dynasty? Who knows? Who knows what Seoul Dynasty are going to do, because they turn up at the tournaments and then in the regular season they're like, nah, I'm fine, thanks. You know. I honestly wouldn't look past the Hangzhou Spark win here. I honestly wouldn't, because I just don't trust Seoul Dynasty to take this seriously. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't think they take it seriously enough to win. I mean, they'll beat the Chengdu Hunters when they play them. That's all I can say. When they play London 3 times in 2 weeks at the end of the season, goodness knows what will happen. But yeah, I think if I was looking at this as a tournament match, Seoul Dynasty would have this dead and buried. But I don't trust Seoul Dynasty to come out and play like that in the regular season. I just don't. No May also hurts. And no Orisa also hurts, because that double barrier becomes a little bit less easy to pull off. So I wonder whether Seoul might gravitate towards the Winston Zarya, which they've done before. And I don't know whether that's their best look. So, yeah, close match, but I think Spark win. Then at 11 AM, we have the Guangzhou Charge taking on the London Spitfire. Can anyone stop the Charge? Because the Charge are doing very well, aren't they? They are now 3rd in the league, the Charge, but they do have quite a few matches under their belt. Again, one of those teams joined as the most matches played at 18. So they don't have many matches left in this season. So they're occupying that 3rd place, but there's a lot of teams breathing down their back. So again, they need to get the wins on the board. They need to keep grinding. London, however, London are in 13th. And yes, they have quite a few matches left in this season, but they will not play Chengdu Hunters again. So that's not the win. You know, London are unbeaten against the Chengdu Hunters this season, and I would have thought that would have been a thing that would have ran throughout the season, considering the Chengdu Hunters haven't looked like they've been improving. But London have to go up against teams like Charge, Excelsior, Seoul Dynasty, Shanghai Dragons, and I don't know where those wins come from. So this is London needing to grab some really cheeky, really interesting wins. And Guangzhou Charge is a possibility. Guangzhou Charge, in the lead up to the Summer Showdown, were taken 3-2 in pretty much every match. So it's fine margins. Can London be one of those teams to break that fine margin and get a 3-2 victory themselves over the Charge? Which would be absolutely massive. It would be absolutely massive. London need to get some very good wins under their belt in the coming weeks if they are to make a push and get to those play-ins and get to those playoffs, because they have got a tough fixture schedule coming up and it's brutal, but it's the way it is. So yeah, but I see a Guangzhou Charge win here, 3-1 I would say. But at 1 PM we see the Chengdu Hunters taking on New York Excelsior. Again, I don't see anything but a New York Excelsior win here. Chengdu Hunters have not been improving. This team will not. I mean, they're third from bottom. They're 18th place. They played 18 matches, which is joint the most with the Guangzhou Charge. And I don't see where the wins are going to come from for the Chengdu Hunters. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for them right now until the end of the season, where they can do they can make some changes. So I just see them losing to the New York Excelsior side 3-0 pretty easily, I would have thought. Yeah, it's a rough one for Chengdu. But moving on, and later on the Saturday at 8 PM, we will see the North American matches return with the Vancouver Titans taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. So this is the match I was on about with the Titans, and this is the match that is more winnable than the Paris Eternal match, in my opinion. Obviously, Paris Eternal are 6th, Los Angeles Gladiators are in 12th, and they're kind of occupying the play-ins, sort of. They're the gatekeepers right now. Vancouver Titans in 17th, but with only 12 matches played, they can make up that ground. Gladiators also only have 12 matches played. So these teams have the capability and the time and the matches to make up ground on the play-ins, or Gladiators even on the playoffs if they really, really were to find some form, but I don't see that happening. The Gladiators are too inconsistent. And this is where we come back to the inconsistency for this Los Angeles Gladiators side. I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans win this match. I don't trust the Gladiators to get wins. I really, really don't. They are very inconsistent, and it's a shame because they do have a lot of good individual quality. And I think this team isn't far from being a real top team. It's just there's a lot of weirdness and things to iron out. Vancouver Titans, they've got the team aspect down. I just don't know whether they've got the individual quality to be right up there. So yeah, it's two teams with two teams with very different problems. If I was to go for anything, and this is going to be a really controversial one, I would say Vancouver Titans win this 3-1. I know that's controversial, but I think the Titans might do it. At 10 PM, we see the Washington Justice taking on the Toronto Defiant. Two teams that need wins. Toronto Defiant had a really good Summer Showdown. They got a win on the board in that Summer Showdown. That is fantastic. That is absolutely phenomenal for the Toronto Defiant. They need to continue that. They need to continue that moving through this batch of fixtures, because if they can, they have a really significant chance of sneaking into those playoffs and play-ins, or play-ins, or whatever they ended up becoming. Washington Justice, however, you are in must-win territory now. You have played 16 matches, you have won 3 and lost 13. You are 19th. You need to win matches. You absolutely need to win matches. Because otherwise, the only way you're going to get into the play-ins and playoffs would be if the Overwatch League decide to make all 20 teams. Take all 20 teams to the playoffs, which I don't think they're going to do. So, yeah, this needs to be where Washington Justice start to pick up wins against the likes of Toronto Defiant. Toronto Defiant are only 15th. They are not that far above them. Washington Justice are not likely to get wins against teams in the top half of the league, so they need to start getting wins against teams in the bottom half. This starts with Toronto Defiant. But I don't see it happening. I think this will be a 3-1 for the Toronto Defiant. But saying that, Washington Justice, again, didn't have a bad Summer Showdown. So there is that to take into account. But at midnight, heading into the Sunday, we see the San Francisco Shock taking on the Boston Uprising. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. This should be a 3-0 for the San Francisco Shock. San Francisco Shock did slip up against the Paris Eternal in the Summer Showdown, only getting that semi-final. But this by no means means that the San Francisco Shock is a bad team. It just means that they weren't quite good enough to get past the Eternal. Boston Uprising, don't have the quality to compete with the Shock. I think we can all agree with that. They are our bottom place team right now. Not as adrift as we expected them to be when we saw them earlier on in this season, not gonna lie, but yeah, it's a rough look for Boston Uprising, and they should perhaps put a little bit more effort into the, not effort, that's the wrong word, a little bit more prep and concentration onto the last game that they have this weekend. But moving on, and at 2 AM on the Sunday, we'll see the Los Angeles Valiant take on the Atlanta Reign. So this is a really tasty middle of the league clash. 8th place Valiant against the 10th place Reign. Reign had a decent Summer Showdown. Valiant had a disappointing Summer Showdown. And I think with the Valiant, this all depends on whether the Lastro situation is sorted out. Because in the Summer Showdown, we saw Lastro subbed out, Apply came in, played Brigitte. Yeah, that happened. And then Gig came in. And yeah, that also happened. Where was Dreamer? So it wasn't a great look for the Valiant. If they've sorted this out, I think they'd beat the Atlanta Reign. If they haven't sorted this out, I really worry for this Valiant side because they could start slipping down the league. They are in 8th with 14 matches played. They are on a positive record right now, which is good. But they are on a record that is being chomped at the heels by the rest of the chasing pack. The Gladiators, the Spark, the Reign, the Spitfire, the Outlaws, the Defiant. They can all come breathing down their necks very, very easily. So they need to make sure that they can maintain their winning ways. And I think they do that if Lastro is back and stuff like that. And I haven't heard anything on that situation. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. But moving on to the Sunday in full then, 8 PM, we will see the Paris Eternal taking on the Toronto Defiant. Toronto Defiant, they can give this to Paris Eternal squad a good go. I'm not saying they can't, but this Paris Eternal squad is very, very good, and it's kind of complete now with Exe and Sparkle. All of the components are now here for this Paris Eternal squad, and then they had that massive display in the Summer Showdown. Now, one thing to highlight with the Summer Showdown display from the Paris Eternal is, well, the Florida Mayhem did something similar in the May Melee, and look what happened to them in the preparation for the Summer Showdown. They didn't really do as well as they did in the May Melee. And that was partly down to a meta change, in my opinion. So, if we do see a slight meta shift, well, we will see a slight meta shift because there'll be no Orisa, but if we see a slight meta shift that makes it slightly tougher for Genji, which I'm not anticipating too much, but if we do, then I do worry, because there were a few fights, even against the Shock, where Paris Eternal did rely on Sparkle. I don't think we can deny that. Not so much in the final, but in the semi-final, I think that was the clear gulf between them and the Shock. Toronto Defiant have got a very capable Genji themselves and agilities, so they can hang with them. And I think it might be closer than some people expect, but I think Paris Eternal got a 3-1 victory. I think Paris Eternal have the opportunity now to really push on. They are a 6th place team, but they could be higher if they keep pushing on during this lead up to the Countdown Cup. But at 10 PM, we will see the Atlanta Reign taking on the Florida Mayhem. The Mayhem's only match this week, and I think this will very heavily depend on meta and what the Florida Mayhem decide to do. So, in the Summer Showdown, in the Summer Showdown, they disappointed. And I was really disappointed in the inflexibility of this Florida Mayhem side. We were in a meta where Genji was extremely prevalent and extremely useful and got extreme value. And Yaki stuck to his Tracer over and over again. He would not go to that Genji, even though he'd played it in the regular season matches just a week before. I don't know why there was this inflexibility about the Florida Mayhem, but I think it cost them during that tournament. So I would hope that is not going to happen again. Yaki's Genji is very serviceable, and I would like to see it continue. BQB will be on the Ash or something like that. That's fine. It'll be interesting to see. How Fate performs with no Orisa. That is another point. Whether they move to the Winston or whether they move to the Reinhardt and they keep Gargoyle on the Sigma. I would imagine they want to keep Gargoyle on the Sigma at all costs because he's looked darn fantastic on that hero. So Yeah, I would imagine they would probably try and run Rhine Sigma. But if we do gravitate back ever so slightly to a Tracer Ashe, then I think the Florida Mayhem start to really get in their comfort zone again. Atlanta Reign, they have got the parts to really go toe-to-toe with this Mayhem side. Their big gulf in class will be in the off-tank position. No matter who the Reign play, but they mostly play Hawk, right? And him versus Gargoyle, there is no comparison, right? So I worry for that. I also think the Florida Mayhem, despite Chris, I'm talking about Gangnam Jin here mainly, I think they have the better support line. And with the DPS, Atlanta Reign have really good DPS as well, depends who they feel. But I still think the Florida Mayhem have a higher pop-off potential than the Reign. It depends on who they play, depends what the meta is. Don't be afraid to play the Genji. That is all I can say for the Mayhem. Do not avoid playing Genji if he is meta, please. Because otherwise you really will cost yourselves dearly. But at midnight, heading into the Monday, we'll see the Boston Uprising taking on the Los Angeles Valiant. It's our final match of the weekend. And this is much more winnable for the Boston Uprising than their match against the Shock. So, again, I think this depends on who the Valiant run. If we're still seeing the problems with Apply on Brigitte, with no Lastro, and no Dreamer and Gigan instead, then we start to see a Valiant side which has a few cracks in it. And this is worrying for them. And I think Boston Uprising could take advantage of that. We've seen much more from the Boston Uprising since Punk has come in. We've seen more of Color Hex and Jerry popping off, especially Color Hex in some respects, because Color Hex was kind of underwhelming before Punk came in. Punk has made a big difference to this team. And we just need to see Boston Uprising pick up some wins. Again, they're a team in the same position as Washington Justice. You need to start picking up wins or you're not going to get anywhere. And yeah, this is an opportunity to start doing that, especially if the Valiant has still got problems with their roster. But this has been a little bit of a lengthy one, I'm not going to lie. There's been quite a few fixtures, we've talked quite a bit. And it's only going to get worse because there's a lot of fixtures in every week. But this is going to be super interesting, and I think there's some really interesting matches coming up. The Texas Derby, for example. I mean, do you call it a derby in America? I don't know what you call it in America. The Texas Showdown. Let's just call it Texas Showdown. Valiant versus the Reign. If the Valiant have their full strength side, will be interesting. Justice versus Defiant. Titans versus Gladiators. Charge versus London, maybe. Spark versus Dynasty. There could be quite a few really close games in this weekend. And I think it makes for great Overwatch, and it'll be very interesting to see what teams do. With no Orisa, no May, no Anna, it's going to be really interesting, and no Widowmaker as well. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.